It is Mary Hyatt, and welcome to the Mary Hyatt Show. Y'all, I am so excited about today's show because obviously y'all know I value authenticity and just being real. And so today's show, I feel like I'm going to say some things that I don't think a lot of people are saying and have a really candid conversation with you. And it is going to be good. And I hope that it gives you a lot of permission to simply love on yourself more as you're going through this journey of self-discovery. But before we get into today's show, I want to make sure that you know of a couple things. Number one, this is super exciting for me. Y'all, the show is now on Spotify. So if you have been listening to me from iTunes, or if you've only been watching the YouTube live show, then now you know you can go hang out with me over on Spotify. I want to make it super easy for you to find me anywhere that you listen to music. And I know that Spotify has become super popular. So make sure that you subscribe today to the show, whether that's here on YouTube, whether that is if I end up, hanging out with you on your commute to work or taking the kids to school or while you are traveling, hit subscribe. That way you will never miss an episode. I often will record guided meditations as well. And so that is a great way for you to be able to make sure that you get notified when those guided meditations come out, because I don't actually really announce those because they're separate from the show. So subscribe. And if you're feeling extra generous, extra lovely, I encourage you to write a review, to give me a 5-star rating, however you choose to listen to the podcast. That way other people will know that this content is valuable. This is something that people can really take with them as encouragement and just positive energy throughout their day, throughout their week. And like I said, if you're feeling extra generous, go ahead and write me a review and tell me why you love the show. And I would just be so grateful. So subscribe, check me out on Spotify, and now let's officially start the show. Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and welcome to the Mary Hyatt Show, episode number 72. PSA, it gets worse before it gets better. Can I get an amen? Can I get a hallelujah? Because I don't know about you, but I feel like all of my friends, all of my clients are going through some tough stuff in this self-help, self-development, self-discovery journey. And it really is feeling like it's in that stage of the worse before it gets better. And that's an intense place to be. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it. A lot of people want to skip over it. They don't want to talk about it. And it's almost as if nobody even gives you the warning that this process, this journey of becoming fully alive, becoming who you are authentically, living a life where you are, as Abraham Hicks would say, turned on, tuned in, tapped in, or however that goes, turned on, tapped in, whatever. You guys know what I'm saying. When you're awake, when you are here, when you are present, when you are in this moment, creating this life that you are able to love. Nobody talks about the hard stuff. And nobody is willing to admit that this work can oftentimes bring you to your knees. And oftentimes over and over again. And I've read so many books. I mean, gosh, I've sort of taken myself through this self-discovery school over the past several years. And I've read so many books on how to create your own reality and choosing to live your best life and what it takes to do that and to create it. And I practice a lot of that stuff. I teach a lot of that stuff. But what these books don't tell you, and what I want to share with you today, is that your new life, what it is that you're working towards, what it is that you are creating, PSA, I'm sorry to say, will cost you your old life. Your new life will cost you your old life. And this kind of release, this kind of coming into a new season, a new phase, a new life, oftentimes feels like we are ripping through scar tissue. And I like to think of things in imagery and pictures. I use my imagination a lot. I use visualization a lot. And so for me, having these pictures in my mind, it helps me connect with the difficult, the painful, the hard. It helps kind of give it a structure to go, yeah, that's what it is. And so for me, it's oftentimes like for me, when I started to learn to use my voice, it was like ripping through layers and layers of scar tissue that I had developed in my throat center, in my neck, that I had learned from decades and decades of how to be quiet, how to please others, how to not voice boundaries or concerns. And so as I've grown in this, and as I've learned to have healthy boundaries, to share what it is that I'm feeling, to speak and use my voice, it oftentimes feels like I'm sort of ripping through this scar tissue. It's like a tearing. And to be honest, it is really freaking painful. Like, it is really, really painful. And I feel like people don't want to talk about the painful. And obviously at the end of this, I'm going to share with you why it's worth it. We're going to end on a happy note, y'all. I'm going to bring you back to hope of, what you are going through has purpose and meaning and all of that. Okay. I'm not going to just say like, this sucks and we get to stay in it. However, after doing this work for almost 7 years, I just want to normalize today and have a candid conversation around the fact that it's freaking hard. The fact that there are moments and there are times when we don't want to get out of bed, when processing our emotions and dealing with what's coming up feels so overwhelming and so just like I can't even function, because it's just so much that's new and so much that I'm releasing and so much that I'm letting go and so many new emotions, and I'm changing this and I'm changing that and I'm reworking this and I'm rewording that, and I'm literally changing the entire structure of my brain, with affirmations and incantations and releasing these old limiting beliefs. As we continue to do this work, it is hard, y'all. Like, it just is. And I think that sometimes it makes us feel like we are going crazy. I would say that has been echoed with my coaching clients, with my friends. It's like with myself, that there are moments where you're like, I'm freaking crazy, y'all. Like, I feel like I am losing my freaking mind. And we're not, but that's what it feels like. And so I want to be the person that can say, hey, girl, this is normal. That this is part of the process. This is the thing that nobody wants to talk about because it's not sexy. And so as we read these self-help books, we're always promised this fairy tale ending. Just do X, Y, Z, and then your life will be perfect. Do X, Y, Z, and everything will change. Do this and do that. And it seems effortless. It seems easy. And the reality is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fighting these old demons. It's a lot of breaking of patterns, breaking of behaviors. And I just want to kind of normalize this, like I said, for you. And so if you have been feeling like you have been in the goo, then this is the perfect episode for you to listen to today. And share this with your girlfriends or your partner or whoever's going through the goo with you. Share this with them so they feel like they're not going crazy. And you may or may not have heard me talk about the goo before, and you might be like, what the heck did she say goo? What the heck is she talking about? So I want to explain what the goo is, because y'all, you're in it. I've been in it. We are in the goo together. Okay, so here's what happens. When a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, and this is a simplified version, okay? I'm not going to go into the details of this. Google it, look it up, and you can geek out over this if you want more information. But the sweet and simple of it is that when a caterpillar goes to become a butterfly, the first thing it does is it creates this cocoon. And then what happens is that it literally liquefies and becomes like a sticky goo. It basically changes its entire structure, its bone structure, its cellular structure, right? It is literally liquefied into a goo in this cocoon before it builds and rebuilds its spinal system, its ability to grow wings, and then emerge as this beautiful butterfly. And so people talk about that, oh yeah, I emerge as a butterfly and I'm becoming the butterfly. But oftentimes people forget to mention the goo that is a necessary part of the process. We don't like to talk about it. And so for me, as I've observed this, as I coach people around this, it's like I start seeing these patterns emerge. I start seeing this process reveal itself. And people go, well, what does it look like? How do I do this? What does it take to have a better life, to be fully alive, to love who I am and what I do? And the process looks a little bit like this. You have a moment where you finally decide that something has to change. And there is this sort of awakening that happens. And all of the things that you've been doing aren't working anymore. And you go, all right, something's got to change. So new awareness is kind of the first step. And then you start becoming a student again. So you start learning these new ways of thinking. And I know for me, like I bought all these books on Amazon and I was just devouring these books, learning about this new way of being, this new way of believing. And so the second step is you're learning. The third step is implementation. This is when you are trying on what you're learning. And this is that awkward stage, like just like a baby is learning how to walk and they fall down a lot. That implementation starts to create pain. So whereas you had this enthusiasm to learn and to grow, and you were like a sponge and you were just digesting and consuming and learning all these things, now all of a sudden you're being asked to implement. And at first you're like, okay, great, I'm gonna try these on and do these new things and have all these affirmations and incantations and self-care and all these different tools that you are beginning to use. And then the fourth step is you're required to change. And this is where the pain comes in, my sweet friends. Because here's the cold hard facts. You have been in survival mode for most of your life, avoiding pain or rejection or hurt of some kind or another. You have really been in that place of survival. So your current beliefs, your current behaviors, the way you do things, the way you show up in the world, your habits, your patterns are now being up for discussion. They're being questioned. And all of those things, your behaviors, your thoughts, your habits, your patterns, were what were giving you security. It's how you got through your day, how you got through your week, how you got through your life. And even though they may have been toxic or destructive or hurtful to yourself or to others, they helped you survive. Like you wouldn't be doing what you were doing unless you had a really good reason for doing it. Most of this, of course, is subconscious, and part of this process is bringing conscious to the subconscious. But you wouldn't be doing what you were doing unless it worked on some level for survival. And so as you begin to raise your awareness and to kind of decide to evolve past this level of coping, of numbing, of surviving, all of a sudden you're being required to change. And so you start feeling everything in a new way. It's like you take the armor off that you've been wearing, and below that armor is your tender body, oftentimes with wounds that are still open and raw and perhaps even festering. It's like you take that armor off and you've got your skin, you're exposed, you're sort of there naked. It's extremely vulnerable, because you've been going through the world, whether that is your patterns of behavior, like the ways you numb. These are things that have kept you from intense pain. So now you take that armor off and you have this new awareness, but you're still sort of left there raw because you haven't quite become the butterfly yet. You're still in that goo. And it sucks. There is this dismantling that happens, and it's the goo. And so because you've been hurting for so long, and all of a sudden you sort of unmask this, and you're sort of settling into this change, and all of this stuff sort of starts rising to the surface, there are going to be days that you don't want to get out of bed. There are going to be days that you literally just can't stop crying. There are days sometimes that are literally just constant, just purging of all this old stuff, the crying. There's often anger. A lot of emotions come up that you probably have not felt in a while. And I know for me, it's like each new layer that I kind of go into this self-work, each new time I'm like, all right, here's the next thing to process and to release and to rewire. I'm like, Lord have mercy, like Jesus, take the wheel. I am so tired. I am so exhausted of doing this work, right? I mean, that's really, if we're being honest, there are moments where we feel like this. And yet, again, people don't want to talk about this. They want to fantasize the happy ending and be there before they're there. They want to skip the goo phase. But y'all, think about just for a moment what it is that we are doing. Those of us who are committed to our recovery, committed to the work, committed to releasing these old patterns of toxicity and codependency and addiction and people-pleasing and perfectionism. As we move out of these old systems, we are breaking generational cycles and patterns of belief. And that is no small thing. To me, this work is massive. We are doing the work that our parents, that our grandparents and their parents and beyond never had the opportunity to do. And so for most of us, we are the first generation with this new kind of mental, cognitive, evolved awareness. And so it feels that big because it is that big. And I don't want to minimize or diminish that by just saying like, oh, here's the quick fix of do this or do that, and then you'll be fine. And nothing's going to be an issue anymore. It's like, no, I am literally dismantling generations of thought patterns, generations of belief systems, generations of toxic belief, behavior, patterns. So it is that big. And I love this quote by Pema Chodron. She says, actually, I'll go back to this one. She says, to be fully alive, fully human, and completely awake is to be continually thrown out of the nest. Great. But isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? It's like that change requires that we are out of our comfort zone, because our comfort zone is oftentimes these patterns that are so harmful to us and robbing us of a life where we are fully awake. And so, my sweet friends, this is the work. When we know we are going to be continually thrown out of the nest for our own good, for the involvement, for the transformation, we need some guidance on how to get through it, because it can feel so overwhelming, because so often in this process, if you're like me, I want to give up, but we can't give up. Has anybody ever experienced that feeling or that moment where you want to give up so bad, but it's almost like you know too much, and you really can't go back to the way that it was. I freaking hate that moment. I have that all the time where I'm like, I just want to give up. I'm so done. Like, I can't tell you how often I say, like, I am so done. But I know that I can't actually be done because I know too much. Like, I know that this work works. I know that I can't go back to a state of being unconscious and numbing and coping. I mean, that's far worse than this experience. But this is a whole other kind of pain because I'm actually awake and I'm feeling it. And that is the worst. I mean, that's the worst feeling of like, I'm too far in to quit. Or, I'm too far in, I want to quit, but I'm too far ahead, in this process that I can't go back. I can't turn back and go to where I was. And when we are in those places, I want to help give you sort of a step-by-step guide to help you walk through this, hopefully a little bit more gracefully. Because getting through this requires that you do things that will feel counterintuitive to your survival response to change and discomfort. So our survival response, when we get threatened, when we feel triggered, when we're being required to get out of our comfort zone, where we're getting thrown out of the nest, we, instead of closing down, shutting down, which is what we're going to want to do. That's our survival lizard brain, is to go into protection. Walls come up. We start coping. We start numbing. We go back to those old familiar ways because we know them. Even if it's painful, we know what to expect. And so when we go into that self-preservation mode, in order to move through this, it is actually going to require that we do the opposite of what we think we should be doing. So instead of shutting down, putting up these walls, running back to these old coping strategies, you want to stay with the feeling of discomfort, to be there in that raw, vulnerable moment of the pain, of the ache, of the crying, of the grief, of the anger, without trying to hurry yourself along to the next phase, without trying to rush it or to resist it or to push away or deny it or to pretend that it's not even happening or to positive mantra your way out of it. As my sweet friend would say, you have to feel it to heal it. And so Pema Chodron, she has this beautiful book, by the way, called When Things Fall Apart. I highly recommend getting it if you are in this season of life. But she says things falling apart is a kind of testing and also a kind of healing. We think that the point is to pass the test or to overcome the problem. But the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. And then they come together again and they fall apart again. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen. Room for grief, for relief, for misery, and for joy. Giving this room. And so let's take a look now, and I want to kind of walk you through these 4 steps to help you navigate the goo, okay? Because we're going to be in it. It's part of it. It's part of the process. So how do we navigate it? So the first step number 1, is to admit that it sucks. Y'all, it is okay to not like the pain, to not like the hard, to not like the uncomfortable. It is okay to admit that you don't like it, that you're over it, that you are tired, that you are exhausted, frustrated, angry, whatever it might be. It is okay to be honest with where you are in the process. And as I am teaching this is just such a deep reminder for me because this is something that I struggle with. Just admitting that I don't like this. I don't want to be here. I'm not enjoying this process. Because I used to think that I could not be frustrated, that I couldn't have a temper tantrum at life, that I had to sort of put on the, smile and fake it. And like, everything is great. Everything is rosy. Everything is peachy keen. And before we can move to a place where we are grateful for our challenges, where we can understand and really accept the fact that our challenges really are blessings. And I do believe that. I really do believe that. You can admit, though, that these challenges aren't fun. You can give yourself permission to just be honest, and you can voice that you wish that it were easier or different. It's okay. I tell my clients this all the time because typically my clients are high achieving women who are not really getting what it is that they want out of life. Maybe they're successful in their business, but they are feeling the strain in their lives and their relationships. And they have a high level of expectation of perfection, that they should be able to get through these hard things with all of this grace and smile and be able to maintain relationships and parenthood and self-care and all these things. And I often have to tell them, it is okay to be human. It is okay to be human. It is okay to be having the human experience and to admit that you're not Superwoman, that you are human, and that this part, the goo, sucks. So the first step is just to admit that it sucks, y'all. Just say it. Say it with me. This sucks. It does. It totally does. But we're not going to leave you there, because step number 2 is to come back to the present moment. So much of what I see with my clients and that they start doing, and we have to kind of go, wait a minute, hang on here, is so much of what adds to the pain is when you're in this questioning and you're in this anger and frustration and grief and doubt and all this kind of stuff, you start playing the what if game. This adds to the pain of what's happening right now. We fast forward to the future and we start playing out worst case scenarios in our minds. Okay, well, if this happens, and okay, well, what if this never ends? And what if I'm stuck here forever? What if this screws up this? And what if that changes this? And we start going into the future and we leave where we are. We leave this present moment and we start going over how everything is going to fall apart, how everything is not going to work out. And we start freaking out about what is to come because we haven't done this before, we don't know. And so there's a lot of fear around this future. It's creating a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And it's almost as if our mind begins to spiral. I'm sure you guys have experienced this before. If you've ever had a panic attack, you know what I'm talking about. But it's like you start here, up here, and then it's just spiral, all the way down into like this whole doomsday kind of mantra. We leave our bodies, we leave the present, and we are so far away. I mean, this is perfectly exemplified in a moment when you're driving. Have you ever done that? When you're driving your car and all of a sudden you sort of end up at the location and you don't even remember driving your car because your mind was somewhere else. You were playing out worst case scenario, or you were thinking what was later, and you don't even remember being in that car, sitting in that car, stopping at a stoplight, having people next to you in a car. And you might be thinking things like, oh my gosh, if I continue this work, or if I don't do the work, I'm always going to be alone, or oh my God, I should just leave and I'll never make that kind of money, or I'll never get over this. Or we try kind of the opposite of this, is we try to skip ahead of where we are. We try to almost like spiritually bully ourselves into the future, onto the next step, trying to pretend that everything is okay or everything is fine, that we've got this, that we aren't affected by this process. It's almost like it's this new spiritual version of manning up. And y'all, it doesn't work. It just invalidates what it is that you are feeling in this present moment. And it puts shame on your process and adds judgment because you think you aren't where you should be. So step 2 is coming back to the present, to diminish the intensity. Come back into the present. What is happening right now? What is happening right in front of you? Driving your car, listening to this show, being on your lunch break. Notice even in this moment, as you listen to this, where are you? What is happening in your room, in your current reality of right now? Where are you? What are you doing? Taking a moment to come back into the present moment. And this will relieve so much anxiety, so much stress, so much pressure, so you don't add to what's happening. And I always like to say, find your feet. Find your feet. I had a therapist who helped me with this kind of mindfulness work years ago, God, over a decade ago. And I kind of came up with the saying for myself of find your feet. Where am I now? Where are my feet? Literally, physically, in this moment. Where are my shoes? What are they touching? There right now. Right now, I'm in my Airbnb house. My feet are on the wood floor. My feet are barefoot. I'm looking at a camera. I'm speaking into a microphone. I have my windows open and I can notice that there are cars driving by outside. I'm sitting at this huge, beautiful wooden table. I'm in my dining room next to my kitchen. I'm speaking to you. I'm teaching to you. That's what's real. That's the only thing that's real. Whatever else is happening in my mind, worst case scenario, playing out this, playing out that, it's like that is robbing me of this present moment. So to gracefully walk through the goo, it's sort of like noticing, recognizing, I'm in the goo. I'm here and it's sticky and I don't like it and I'm uncomfortable. And oftentimes I will touch my body because I want to feel this is happening in my body. And so when you're starting to feel anger or grief or overwhelm, it's sort of like, okay, where is that being generated inside of my body? Coming back to body awareness. I have a lot of great meditations on this. But body awareness. And the guided meditations, by the way, can be found on the show, on the podcast. So just check those out. But like tapping into here and now present. Oh, I'm feeling anxiety in my heart. Or I'm feeling nauseous because I'm scared or I'm fearful or whatever. It's like, come into the present moment. Come back, come back, come back. Come back, come back, come back. You're right here, right now. Find your feet, find your feet. So that's the step number 2, come back to the present moment. Now, step number 3 is to open to what is here. Open to what's here. Now, this is probably my favorite step out of these 4 steps. However, I think sometimes this can be the hardest step. This is about accepting and allowing what is here, making space for what is here. It's sort of this non-resistance approach, where the opposite would be like sticking our hands out in front of us, palms forward, and saying, no, nope, I can't feel that. I don't want to be here. I'm not doing this. La, 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 no, this is not happening. This is not happening. Step number 3 is removing the resistance, opening to what's here. The way through the goo is by having radical acceptance of what is. It's staying open when you want to close. It is allowing any emotion that is here to be here without trying to change it or say that it can't be here or that it's not welcome. It's letting all of that anger, all of that grief, that hurt, that fear, that doubt, whatever is coming up, to have a seat at your table, to let yourself continue to cry and to not hurry up the crying. I can't tell you how often I have seen that happen with people where they start to cry and then they quickly apologize and kind of, take their tears back up to their eyes and wipe them off. And it's like, I'm fine. It's okay. It's no big deal. I'm good, And it's like, no, baby, you're not good. Like, it's okay. Allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. And if you need to cry, let yourself cry without trying to rush to the solution or rush to the fixing or cover it up or stuff it down or be in denial and pretend that it's not happening. Opening, to let ourselves sit in the discomfort of what is, to increase the tolerance of sitting in the goo, having tolerance for the discomfort, to just be with ourselves, be with what is coming up. And it requires that we sort of slow down and just be with ourselves. And I do this all the time by just putting my hand over my heart, and I will just say to myself, usually through some deep breathing, a couple deep breaths, and I'll say, okay, as if I were speaking to my little girl inside who doesn't feel safe to share her emotions or doesn't feel safe being vulnerable. This is an opportunity to sort of reparent myself and to love on myself a little bit here. And I'll say, just like I was speaking to a little girl, to my little girl, it's okay. I hear you. I hear you. You have space to feel. It's okay. It's okay, sweetie. I know this is really hard. I know this is really scary. I know that you have a lot of fear right now. I hear you. I hear you. It's okay. You're okay. You can cry. It's okay. And I speak really kindly and gently to myself. And I know that might sound a little strange if you've never done it before, but it's very soothing. It's like kind of being the nurturer to yourself when all this hard stuff is coming up. Giving it space, opening to what's here, lovingly speaking to yourself. It's okay, I hear you. And just being with what's here right now, with what emotion is in your body, in your mind, just being. And it's really, really a beautiful process. So that's step number 3. And then step number 4, sort of an add-on to this, and this is offering yourself tenderness. Offering yourself tenderness. I love this quote by Danielle Laporte. She says, at some point, we have to soften, which is counterintuitive when you feel like drowning. When you're hammering yourself for being in pain again, gentleness is actually a breakthrough. When we are going through and experiencing and sitting in the goo, we don't need more pressure. We don't need more fixing. We don't need more solutions. We need more tenderness, more gentleness, more allowing, more accepting, more compassion, deeper understanding. And so how we move through this messy is with self-compassion. Without the overwhelm, without more shoulds. We need tenderness, gentleness, grace. And so when we say to ourselves, I shouldn't be here. Oh my God, I shouldn't be here. Then we answer with, it's okay to be here. When we say to ourselves, oh my God, what is wrong with me? We answer with, nothing, baby. I am not broken. When we say, oh my God, I think I'm going crazy. Am I going crazy? We answer with, I am exactly where I should be. When we say, I'm scared, we answer with, I am safe. The way through is not strength and powering and mustering through and biting down and gritting our teeth and just dealing with it. The way through is tenderness, more tenderness, more tenderness, and compassion for ourselves, softening instead of adding judgment to ourselves for being in the goo, loving ourselves more, giving ourselves grace, speaking kindly to ourselves as we're going through all of this. And so just like I did before, I will say to myself, I see you, Mary. I see you. And you know what? And I look myself in the mirror. I look at myself right into the eyes in the mirror, and I'll just say, I see you. You are doing such big work, girl. Look at you. Like, I know it is hard, but you're doing it. You are so brave. You are so brave. And you can do hard things. I see you. I see you. And just offering ourselves that ability to see ourselves and to say, like, you're doing it. You're being so brave right now. I see you. I hear you. That kind of compassionate self-talk is so healing to this process. It takes the pressure off. And ultimately, I feel like it just gives you permission to be exactly where you are right now. So, my sweet friends, it's okay to be human and to admit that sometimes it sucks. to come back to this present moment with acceptance of what is coming up, and then to offer ourselves more tenderness, more compassion. That is the way through what is really hard on this journey of becoming our truest selves, the self-discovery, self-help, self-development journey that we are on. Because the mess is normal. Feeling like a basket case is normal. Feeling like it's all sort of falling apart around you is normal. Because the truth is, even though there are some moments where you feel like you have been buried, the reality is that you have been planted. You are becoming that butterfly. You are not the same person today as you were yesterday or a year ago or 5 years ago. You are different. You are doing it. You are moving forward to become that butterfly. And no, we're never going to get that perfect, happy fairy tale ending, but we can create a life that we can be present for, and a life that we are conscious for, and a life that we do love, and a life where we can be fully alive. And you're doing it. You are healing. You are becoming. And God, it is so worth it. And I would never go back to that old way of coping and numbing and surviving, even though sometimes I fantasize and go, oh my God, it was so easier when I wasn't doing this work. But it wasn't. It wasn't. I was suffering so badly and felt like I was drowning. Oh God, I wouldn't do anything to go back to that. And obviously, yes, in this season, in this phase, and through this work, we are alive. We're feeling it. We're feeling it all. And it's hard and there's pain, we're feeling the good and the bad, the hard and the easy, the joy and the suffering. We're feeling it all. We're awake for it all. But I have new tools now, new awareness, deeper compassion. And I know, because I've done this over and over again, and so have you, that you can do hard things. The joy, the peace, the letting go, the release, the love. It's like, man, the juice is totally worth the squeeze. But we can't forget that there's the squeeze. We can't pretend that there's not the squeeze. And I hope that this show today validated the squeeze that you might be going through. But my sweet friends, life is beautiful. Life is rigged in our favor. And I can't wait to see how you continue to emerge and allow yourself to slow down, to be in the goo, to emerge with these new beautiful wings. You are in that process. And so I just want to say to you today, I see you. I hear you. And you are so brave. And you can do hard things. So y'all, thank you for joining me for today's episode. I hope that you will subscribe to however you are listening to this podcast. Of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of the episodes or any of the guided meditations that I release, because this is the support, the loving, non-judgmental space and support that I hope that you will need to be able to continue this big work that you are doing. So until next week, remember that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I will see y'all next week.